I'm going to go into this part now, pattern and casting dimensions. If this section is a bit difficult to understand, if you feel like you know or you understand a certain part in a certain way and you feel like, oh man, I could totally help a brother out or a sister out with this section, feel free to write it as a comment, just if how you understand it maybe, because I feel like this part you sometimes either get it or you don't, and when you get it, it's just amazing, and then you realize but you don't get it, but then you do get it, and it just helps if you share knowledge with each other so that you can understand. So yeah, let's get into it. We have different types of allowances that I've listed here in the table. We have shrinkage allowance, recommended machining allowance, and casting tolerance. Okay, this is the general table that you should draw in the exam. There is not a section in the textbook that has these things, so a lot of this you must try to practice or memorize the table. This is a very good table to have, not with these texts in specifically, but you'll usually write down the part I mentioned, the shrinkage allowance, the RMA, casting, and then the final pattern dimension that you'll have on that side. What I've done here is just write down what the rules for these are. So firstly, we have the shrinking allowance. Okay, so the shrinking allowance, and this is going to blow your mind, is to allow for shrinkage. No, so when you heat up this thing, it is going to shrink for scientific reasons. And we allow for that by adding a certain percentage. So this is our range of percentages, and we tend to want to use 1.8. So they'll be talking about alpha. Oh no, it's not alpha, it's something else. Never mind. Don't listen to that part. I'll get to alpha later. But use the 1.8. Just remember 1.8%, because we're going to be working with steel. This is steel casting. That's the thing. We're not going to be casting anything else. So remember 1.8. 1.8, 1.8. We apply it to all dimensions, not just the tolerance ones, okay? Because obviously everything in every dimension of our part is going to be growing. Oh, sorry, shrinking. It's literally in the name. Is going to be shrinking. Okay, so that's the main thing. What I'm saying here is what to apply it to, what not to apply it to, and this is information about it. Okay, so then we have the recommended machining allowance. And like you saw in that first video, the intro video, you have a part that's rough around the edges. So you know you're going to be machining off certain parts, depending on what they tell you in the question specifically. But in general, it is additive. You're going to add a little bit to that dimension because it's going to be machined off anyway. And that's for general dimensions, not core. I'll explain why the core is different just now, but you can see how this makes sense, right? For external casting dimensions, you get positive for both the RMA, and I'll speak about casting tolerance now, but for the RMA, which is the recommended machining allowance, it is positive, okay? Now, what is the value that you must apply? So you look at what you should do is look at the table in the paper that has all those letters that usually say things like J to K or whatever, or just individual letters. I can't quite recall. I don't have the papers with me at the moment. I just have this guide. But it is one of the letters. The longest dimension determines the RMA that you use. So you match the letter with the longest dimension, or the dimension that is closest to in those columns. It is in the last page of the paper. We'll have the tables that I'm referring to here for these tables. Okay. So things that is not applied to for this recommended machining allowance, it is not applied for center to center tolerances. So literally it is a center to center tolerance just means if there's a center to a center and there's a tolerance, say like plus minus 3 or whatever, it is in the name. Center to center, you don't include it in your calculations here because they're not going to tell you, oh, what? Okay, we're back. They're not going to tell you okay, do it for this dimension, this dimension, this dimension, this dimension. You must find the new dimensions for these ones. You're going to have to kind of decipher which ones you're supposed to do. Or they're going to ask you the tolerance dimensions or the relevant ones or whatever. But I digress. I'm rambling a bit there. Let's backtrack. Not for center to center tolerances. And it's also not applied to non-tolerance dimensions. So anything that literally just says 30, but doesn't say 30 plus minus 5 or whatever. You don't worry about these for this section. Only these ones. Okay? Unlike this one, which is applied to all. Just because we don't really care about the precision that much if we, in the first place, if we didn't indicate the precision on our diagram itself. Okay. So then we have our casting tolerances that are also, as far as I understand, positive. They follow a similar process. They're just at the casting table, where you look at the table in the paper for hand or machine molded. So under this category, take the average and apply it to the dimension. Again, not to center tolerances and not to non-tolerance dimensions. So these are very similar. They're just using different tables. For cores, not normal patterns, for cores, which are the things that we put into our patterns. What am I doing there? If we have like a weird thing over there, and this thing needs a hole, then we put a core through it. This thing has different rules because here, when we design our core and we design the dimensions of that core, we're not really designing for the core itself. We're designing for the thing that's going to be put into, right? So, for example, if shrinkage occurs, or for the casting tolerance, if shrinkage occurs, it's shrinking away from the edges, right? So this is our metal. Can I have to get a different color? Oh, it's my soul. Okay. Here's our core. Here is our molten hot metal, right? This is how I understand it. Might not be entirely correct. Again, please feel free to correct me in the comments, but this is just how I understand it. This is the molten metal, and it's shrinking away from this edge. This is the metal like being poured around this core. It's shrinking away. But now this hole is suddenly bigger if you think about it, because this core is making this, it is here to allow for this hole. Now this hole is bigger. So instead, what we do is we make the core smaller. Why? The core core because this is the original one. The core smaller because now when this thing shrinks, it shrinks only until there. Instead, if the core was this wide, it shrinks all the way till there. So instead, now the hole is the correct size. I hope that makes sense. That's how I understand why we have negative adjustments for our core dimensions. Same, for example, with machining as well. We machine for a smaller hole because when we machine, we're machining for a bigger one. So you want to make it smaller because we're going to take away from the sides to make it bigger. And we have positive adjustments for the RMA and casting tolerances. Okay. There's a lot of focus on this, but this is just important to know. It's like a little thing to catch you out. For center to center dimensions, don't look at that. Only do this one. Okay. Cool. Got it? Happiness. Not entirely sure if this is to do with this section or not. I put it here, so maybe it is. But just volume change, the change in volume percentage is what we refer to as alpha. And this is the value that you want to remember, 3.16, okay? We remember the value 1.8